I know. Dude, okay. So for just a second while I share this to public. I want to share it. Share to coach session 11. Oh. Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Oh, nice. You're on a walk. Jane,
Hiya.
going?
Yeah, I've not been around for the last few weeks, have I?
Yeah, how you been? What's
I've been good. I've been Nick Bettini'd at Creative Recharge.
Oh, nice. How was that?
That was absolutely awesome. Can't recommend it more. It was an incredible experience. Yeah, I'm still kind of letting it sit and chewing it over a little bit, but yeah, it was incredible.
That's fantastic. I love to hear that. I love to hear that, considering this is being streamed to the coaching musicians group, so hopefully people hear you talking about
Exactly.
how great of
Yeah.
a time it was.
Well, him and both Nick and Bloom created an amazing week. It was just incredible, and the other people on it as well. It was just one miracle to another. It was incredible.
That's fantastic. That's great. Here comes Dennis too. Hey, Dennis.
Hi, Dennis.
Hey, all.
We're gonna be a few people short today, I think. Kate is honoring her late father today. So we'll just kind of hang out for a second though, because I want to talk about Devin's website a little bit here before we dive too much into it. So if we just hang out for a minute, see who else jumps in here. Hi, what's going on, Dennis?
Devin, thank you for the gift of Mary. She like didn't skip a frickin' heartbeat. She jumped right in and wants to help me create a mechanism to generate some income. And like, she's just like bang, bang, bang. And she's approachable and she's witty and she's nice and she's wonderful. And she told me that I ought to go audition for America's Got Talent. So I am. So that's where that comes from. Anyway,
Yeah.
we'll see where that shit goes, if it goes beyond like the virtual 90-second audition or not. But I'm ready to go look Simon in the eye. No big deal.
For sure. That's great. That's what you got to do. You got to step it up sometimes. Geez, what am I doing here?
I'm at that spot where you're standing in the dark and you can't see in front of you and you can't see behind you and you can't see anywhere else around you. And you just got to decide whether you're going to jump or not.
Yeah, totally.
The thing you put about not seeing the path because you're on the path, that's where I'm at. That makes sense.
For sure. Yeah, that's a place to be. That's like it's a Jungian quote. Carl Jung talks about that. It's like you really know you're on the forefront of your consciousness when you can't see. You're right at the edge of your manifestation abilities. Right? You're not sitting comfortably in the center. You're right on the nice edge kind of thing.
Yeah, and I'm sure that there'll be days that I miss that, but for right now, what the hell? What a ride.
Yeah, totally. That's the way to be. Hell yeah. It's like my father says, if you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space. Yeah, it's a good one. Now you can understand a little bit of my personality.
Good to see what made you, Neil.
Wait a minute. Have you always considered him to be humorous?
Yeah, I think that there was always like, sometimes it was difficult. Took me a while to understand his tongue-in-cheek kind of stuff, But he was always, his humor is my humor, 100%.
Oh yeah, no, I totally get that. I didn't find out till after my dad had been dead for like 30 years that he was a funny person. I have a great sense of humor. I was having a conversation with my aunt one day and she said, your dad was exactly like you. I said, what? How come I never found that out? She goes, I don't know. She goes, he was always cracking jokes and wanted everybody to enjoy what they were doing, and thought stuff was funny. And I'm like, okay, well, that makes sense.
Totally. Sometimes a father is just very serious to them. Now I have a different relationship with him. It's more, he's not that, when you're a father to young children, there's always that kind of like fear that they're gonna go sideways, trying to keep them on. So I'm not sure if anyone else will show up today, but just because we're on the live stream too, I want to talk about something that I thought was really important and I thought was really, really cool. Exceptionally cool, actually. I think it is like a crossing of a threshold. And that is Devin making this website for the Hummingbird Society and collecting all this information of the first 10 chapters. My feeling is that no community or society or group is legitimate until art starts to come out of the group or the community. Once there's like it creates this reciprocal feedback mechanism. And some of the art might be historical, like it might be something that like captures a certain moment, or it might be characteristic, or it captures elements of the personalities involved. It might be technical, where it's like useful to the group, but regardless of kind of what type of art it is, whether it's functional or non-functional, that is like a threshold. So we have reached that threshold. So I am really, really excited about that, deeply excited about that. So I have to thank Devin again for going out of his way to create something and become a mirror for the group itself. So thank you very much for that. Hey, Philip. So then, to me, the next thing that kind of happens because of that is how the community digests that art. So, and then one of the kind of things that, to me, is the next threshold about that art is when there is different forms of criticism about the art. How it works, how it functions within the community, how it's useful to the people in the community, what could be better, what could change, whether it reflects the people in the community, all those kinds of things. So I would really encourage, and I'm going to put this out here a few times because I'm sure there will be different people kind of coming through the calls, to check out what Devin is doing and then be the beta testing community that will make what he's doing more and more useful to us. Because I was going through that You'll see it in the email too, Dennis, the one that we just put out. Because I was going through it and I loved what it was, and I love that you did this all on your own, Devin. It's ridiculously powerful. So I'd love to know what other members think, like what questions they have about it, commentary, how they use it, if they're confused about different sections of it, and to give some honest feedback, because it's an effort reciprocated back into the group. So I think that would be really cool if you just browsed it, checked it out. I'm gonna continue to come back to this for a little while, until something else emerges, until something new emerges, or if that combines with something else, So hopefully, does that work for you, Devin? Are you open to that kind of stuff? Okay, very cool. Very, very cool. Yeah, because I was looking at it and I was like, wow, this is. And in a way, if that is flesh, I already talked to Devin about this, where I was like, you should approach Rich Litvin about this. Like, show him the work you've done, really go big. And it's obviously in the early stages of it, but if the community pours some energy into that and kind of boosts and supports that, who knows? Could be an amazing legacy to attach to the book. So I just wanted to say that. The other reason why I wanted to talk about that is because Devin did all this work. He brought Mary in and he did this website, and it was almost kind of like so much for one call. So I didn't feel like he got to fully flesh it out. And so I just want to keep coming back to it. And I want people to check it out on their own. So with that in mind, other people might show up, but we might just have a tight-knit kind of thing for today. So I want to talk about this book. I also want to kind of apologize because my last week, especially because I talked to Mary as well. It was a deep impact. The impact was so deep that I actually forgot why I had did that day. Like the next day on Thursday, I was trying to remember what I did on Wednesday. And I was like, I couldn't figure it out. And then I realized that was when Mary had talked with us, and I had felt like that had happened a month ago. Like it felt like time sped up so fast. So much happened in one day. It made me realize the power of her being, like how much she accelerates what's happening around her. I was like, holy smokes, that hasn't even been 24 hours and there's been this huge shift around me. That's a level of being to me that creates $1 million clients, not just the information, but the acceleration of events in our lives. So, but the reason why I want to apologize is because I didn't give enough time to talk about Peter Drucker. So, just going to share the screen for a sec. Am I showing the right screen now? So this is another situation where, we get this quote, the best way to predict the future is to create it, right? Which is a phenomenal quote, stands alone. But Peter Drucker is, if you look into who Peter Drucker is, it's ridiculous. The concept of a knowledge worker, the concept of modern management in companies, the concept of an MBA in business, all these things come from Peter Drucker. And then Peter Drucker is connected to a political and economic network of thinkers from the turn of the last century that are all prolific names in their own right. So we don't have enough time necessarily to dive into Peter Drucker himself, but I'm going to probably send a follow-up email today just to kind of remind people to check out some things from Peter Drucker and his concepts on management, because it will probably blow your mind. It will give you kind of when Rich Litvin talks about how coaching used to be called leadership. In my opinion, he's talking about Peter Drucker. He's talking about Peter Drucker's systems of management. And one of the defining things that Peter Drucker talks about is that when he was in school and checking out classes on economics, he realized that the people who were interested in economics were really interested in numbers, and he was really interested in people. So whereas kind of prior to Peter Drucker, in business, people were talking about number crunching in terms of economics and how crunching numbers was going to give you what you wanted. He was talking about the people and how by creating a culture and leading people, you were going to get the economic numbers you're looking for. So that's like it's really heavy. So I would just really encourage you to even take a cursory glance at what Peter Drucker does and how he got to this. The best way to predict the future is to create it sentence. So anyways, without further ado, I'm just going to get into this with you guys. So you don't get clients, you don't acquire clients, and you definitely don't attract clients. So we know that what Rich, or what I think it's Rich, yeah, thinks about clients in that sense. Clients are created. Getting clients is an old-fashioned hunter-gatherer approach to growing a coaching practice. It's outdated because it puts all of your success in the hands of other people. It puts you in an aggressive mindset that isn't conducive to having people say yes. And it has your clients on edge waiting for that moment when you're about to manipulate them. Attracting clients has become a trendy phrase, but it's such a passive approach to growing a coaching business. Having a powerful vision for your business is a fantastic idea, but no successful business was ever developed from creating a vision board and then sitting down and waiting for dream clients to knock at the door. So I feel like I'm just going to hit a lot of this because it's only one, it's very short. There is another way, a better way, and it occurs when you bring your creativity to the table, when you're willing to combine imagination with action. The kind of clients you would love to work with are only created in a conversation. A high-performing, high-paying clients are only created in impactful, life-changing coaching conversations. So I think that we're going to reverse engineer this and start from the back. So I love how we're so intimate here. So what would you consider to be an impactful conversation? How do you create, what are some of the mechanics that create a powerful conversation? Okay, let's hear from Dennis. Go for it, my man.
Honesty, transparency, clarity of what you're talking about. Just being real and open and offering all of those things to fuel whatever the conversation is that you're having.
Okay, cool. That's honesty, clarity, transparency. I'm hearing you. Okay. I'm gonna go around the board because I got things to say about that, but I want to keep going here. What about you, Devin? I think it's Devin next, right? Yeah.
I feel like especially with a coaching conversation, the first thing that came to mind was this idea of like looking at old things in new ways, and the definition of an insight of being a new thought. Like So how many of those new ways of looking at the world and maybe noticing things that were right there, but were never acknowledged in a different way? And I also feel like there's a depth piece, which is to be able to get someone to be able to have that level of honesty, which is created by all the things that all of the prereqs that Dennis mentioned, but to have that level of depth to get someone in touch with themselves at a different level that they have not been able to.
Okay, great. So here is where this is to me where we would have like a type of conversation. So can you unpack what you mean by depth?
Depth, yeah. So I think most people's conversation throughout the day are generally pretty logistic oriented, surface level, what's happening, maybe gossip. We're probably not in that group, but very few are like, what do you really want? Why are you really here? And like, if what are we doing here? Are you on purpose? Are you gonna die with no regrets? Well, that's good.
We're gonna die with no regrets. That's
Like,
fantastic.
are you really going for it? Why are we here? You know?
Okay, so there's a certain, like, when you say it like that, it sounds like there's a certain, it's about focus.
It is for me. It's everything is focus. Focus is experience. Focus dictates our results, our experience. Everything is focus from my perspective. So whenever I'm having a coaching conversation, I'm looking at where they are focused and where they say they want something, and where those two things don't maybe match up. And a lot, yeah, it's a process of zooming in and zooming out and going like, where is the focus?
Kind of like a flashlight idea. And okay, so there, and then to kind of, I want to thread some things together here, because you were saying that, so that clarity and transparency that Dennis was saying, and honesty, that factors into the focus to some degree. Is that kind of what you're?
These are all beautiful words. I place such an emphasis on focus in my work, at least, and I believe that clarity comes from focus. It's kind of, it could go back and forth. But yeah, if you have a clear place and a context where you can be open and honest and like lovingly confrontational, then you can get to the depth, which I believe is clarity, focus, or purpose. Insert buzzword here.
That's a buzzword, yeah, for sure. And I love that you say that too, because there is a certain intellectualizing that can occur where you're like, yeah, it's about clarity, transparency, honesty, focus, depth, blah, blah, blah. And then that whole thing can be like, well, it can be bullshit, right? Like it can be really great, but if it's buzzwordy, like you're saying, it's very easy for someone to attach to those words, but they I'm going to stick here for just a second because I feel like it's good. So where does being factor into that?
Can I share on this one? Or was
Yeah,
that for
I'm asking you because you were like, yeah, insert buzzword. So you're like aware of the meta process that's going on there. So I wanted to unpack that for a second.
Yeah, so I think how you're being when you show up into a conversation is what allows for all of the other things to emerge. So if I am being present, if I am being a stand for someone's, deepest dreams and highest aspirations, I will show up in that way, and the conversation will unfold and naturally, and it will be powerful, and they'll leave with clarity or focus or more motivation or whatever they want, because I'm going, hey, this is where I'm coming from. And then I feel like there's another piece, because we're with people here. We get to dance with two people, and you're also, I think the presence allows you to perceive their state of being, and I think you can be present and witnessing their being when you ask questions or when they share things, and you can kind of point back to different states of being and where little hang-ups are. I feel like I'm rambling a little bit now.
No,
But
I
there,
no, I think you're on point.
and I think our job as a coach is to come in as clean and clear as possible, as empty, and be present so that we can see the other person's state of being, whether they're coming in anxious, excited, depressed, like whatever it is, we're able to be there for whatever. And then in our actual coaching, we can kind of direct towards a different state of being.
Mm. Mm. I like this. I like this. Okay, I want to keep going because I feel like we're gonna swirl this together. So Jane, no, sorry, Philip.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm loving these conversations. Also, I wanted to point out how crazy it is that
Hey,
Devon.
Philip, oh, for one, sorry, Philip, but I don't know for the rest of you guys, but it sounds like you're jacked up. You're breaking up because your microphone is really loud.
Is it loud?
It's super loud. It's like distorting level loud.
Is that a bit better now?
It's still, I like it. Devin just jumps right in there with yeah. Is it your tube amp? Or are you like, sounds like you got the gain just jacked through the roof or something.
I've been teaching with these settings, so I feel sorry for my students. Is that better now?
No, it's still this. Yeah, I know you're super high.
Okay, I'm going to put my gain to 0. This is my gain on 0.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
You should put everything to unity, my man.
It was on Unity, and then somebody was complaining that I'm too quiet.
They should have probably turned up their computer speakers. Anyways, sorry to stop your thought, but it was just a technical.
No, good. Thanks for pointing it out. I'm audible and not abrasive now, I hope. I wanted to point out how crazy it is that Devon's mug matches Dennis's t-shirt.
Nice.
Isn't that crazy?
That's awesome.
Okay, so the question was about transformation. How is the best way to create transformation in someone in that first call? And I think
Yeah.
I don't super have anything original to say, I don't think, because I'm just going to be echoing what other people have said already, but maybe in my own words I'll add something to the conversation. So essentially, I think that the way that you have that transformative conversation is through those traits that we were talking about: the curiosity, the honesty, the ability to dig deep and look for someone's deeper. Got the blurry effect on. Oh, all you need is love. There we go. But moreover, what we're reading now, if clients are not created, the reason I like this word created instead of attract or get clients is because the word create implies that I could be having a conversation with someone and I create them, I turn them into a client by being so impactful. It's like someone wasn't a client until they came to me. Like the people in the world aren't clients. It's only when they come and have the interaction that they could switch into the state of becoming a client. Prior to the interaction, they were just a person. So attracting clients is trying to find someone who's already ready for coaching, but we're just attracting people and we're making them ready for coaching. Am I getting the right idea here?
Yeah, I like the way that you're putting that, Philip. The way I hear what you're saying is like the other way when you're attracting clients or trying to get clients, it's as if there's like just clients out in the world, you know? And then you're just trying to it's like you're fishing or something like that. And you're just trying to reel in these client fish. Whereas, so like they're already ready-made out there. You just got to find them and collect them. And that's kind of the whole situation, right? You got to get them from other people or something like that. As if they're not people, they're clients, whatever client is to you,
Yeah.
Whereas with attracting clients, for a simple story for that on my behalf is Nick said to me that after a while of doing what I've been doing, that I'm probably going to see people show up on gigs and start asking me questions about this whole coaching thing. And I was kind of like, just in the same way that Kate was saying that she didn't think people were going to like buy a full on kind of package from her. I didn't think that I was going to start seeing musicians show up on a gig and have a conversation with me between sets about what I'm doing with this coaching thing, or at a jam session or something. But it's happened. People have approached me, and then I've been able to have powerful conversations with them, and I'm still kind of like in the gymnasium of that, of like how to have a powerful conversation with someone about coaching that takes a stand for coaching while I'm on the gig. You know, because they'll be like, so what's like one person, this amazing cello player I was playing with recently, she came through the door like to the first rehearsal and she saw me and she's like, Neil, what's going on with this coaching thing that you're doing? It was like the first thing that she said to me, right? And that had been kind of created out of what I've been doing, kind of with the Prosperous Coach and with so many other posts and everything like that.
Is that predominantly through Facebook?
Yeah, through Facebook and through Instagram a bit. And then it started to filter into real life. People started coming out of the woodwork, and I was at a jam down in Vancouver, and it was a big jam, and there was this great guitar player there, and we were just hanging out on the couch, like it was at a guy's house, and he's like, so like, tell me about this coaching thing that you're doing. Like, how did you even come up with this idea? And then we had a great conversation about how it's useful, you know? So, and I'm still learning how in those conversations to have an actual powerful conversation, not where I just like give them the grocery list of why coaching is cool or my history of it, but actually involve them in a conversation that is impactful for them right there. So they're like, you know what? This is great. I was another situation, a bass player called me a few days ago about a gig that we're doing in August. And then he was like, so what are you doing with this coaching thing? It keeps coming up, you know? So it's like an interesting conversation piece. And then, but it's like this attracting clients kind of thing, like you're saying. So
I kind of wanted to plug that back in if I can with yeah, maybe a bit of a tenuous connection, but in our first call, I had a coaching session with Neil, and Neil said something which like just shook me up so much to my very core that my energy dipped for like the next day or two, like noticeably. I was like, not depressed, but I was like really soul searching, because you basically put me on a path of like, what's your vision? Are you clear with your vision? I'm like, yeah, I know what my vision is. And then you kind of ask me, so what is it? And I realized like, oh, I'm not really actually that clear with it. Also, it changes and it evolves, and the vision I created myself, you know, maybe a few years ago, probably by now, is a bit different to the vision I have now. And you sort of said, you know, create this practice where you're working on your vision daily. So I think that's also a bit of an example of creating a client. Like, had that been the first session, I might have said like, oh, wow, that was really powerful. Okay, you've just created me as a client.
Yeah, exactly. Because we went right, well, especially with you, Philip, like you were, you know, I felt after I got off that call, I was kind of like, wow, like I hope that you felt safe in that, because you were like, just go all the way, man, go deep, like go,
Yeah.
cut into me, show me the truth. And I was like, okay, like here we go. And then we went to that thing I find is usually the hardest for people to, and if I stick with them on it for a while, it really can, people leave shook, you know?
Yeah.
Because that is, I remember saying to you, I was like, do you know your vision as well as you know your scales? And you were like, well, I don't practice my scales that much. And I was like, well, you should practice your scales and your vision.
That's not what I said. I practice my scales.
But it's just kind of like that situation of how well do you know your music? Do you know your vision as well as you know your music?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Everyone needs a kick in the ass to play their scales. Like if you're telling me you're playing your scales all the time, like
Okay, fine. You got me. I could practice my scales more.
two-handed in thirds, in sixes. Come on. But anyways, I want to hear what Jane has to say too. Let's kind of move this along a bit here.
I mean, it's kind of moved on from where I was coming in, and I know I missed a bit. Apologies for that. A postman arrived at the door and annoyed my dogs. So for me, I was thinking around this creation of clients, and I was thinking about the powerful conversations. And I kind of see it as a real privilege where I can hold this intelligent mirror up for the client or the prospective client, and they can see their thinking. And sometimes they see their thinking for what it is, or their beliefs for what they are, and they realize that they're just thoughts. And in that moment, you know, a lot can change for them. And, you know, one client described it as like being in a cocoon as a butterfly. And then through the conversation, that cocoon became, you know, they became the butterfly, and the butterfly took wing. And that conversation, and that was one conversation. And I think that's kind of the power. I remember very early on in becoming a coach entrepreneur, somebody said to me, you do too much in your conversations. You serve them too deeply. And so they've got no reason to come back for more. And I was going, oh, I can't do any different. You know, and I don't intend to do any different, which was the next statement. You know, because I serve them at the level that they're asking to be served. And sometimes I serve them at a level that they didn't know they wanted. And that is incredibly powerful. But in terms of building that connection, there is a real art to creating connections with people. And I've once heard conversation described as a group of people having a soliloquy one at a time. So they knew that they were supposed to talk in turn, but they weren't really listening. And if you listen to conversation, you can hear that's what's happening. So the art of a really powerful connection is to show up, as Devon said, and truly listen. But listen with your whole body and all of your senses, not just your ears, because that tells you so much. Watch everything about them. You know, notice every little bit. And as you do that, you can tune in and you can create a resonance that allows that person to go, I'm safe here. I'm going to be heard here. I'm going to be held here. And from that moment on, the conversation can go where the conversation goes. And that's the importance.
Yeah, I really agree there. Jane, I feel like other people want to weigh in on this too, but I just wanted to just point out that cocoon thing that you're talking about, because I think that's a wonderful metaphor in conversation, that there might be like a husk of thought, you know, like something on the outside that appears to be who they are and how they think. And with some, you know, with some coaxing and with some working, you know, you can split that cocoon open and see what the deeper thoughts are, or what the personal thoughts are, rather than maybe what's been layered on or what's been spun around them, you know.
And in this particular case, it was about removing some of those beliefs that were suddenly seen to be only thoughts and not truths. And by doing that, and that's an incredibly powerful process, and can be felt as well as heard. It can be really physical, that process, and you can see it. You know, yesterday's client in the pause suddenly started crying when they saw this thing in a different light, and it just brought that emotion out. And that's courageous to be able, I think, to truly create clients. Courage in the sense that you are, as you said earlier, and I think everybody said, is you can take people to levels that are uncomfortable because you do it with love, and you do it because you know that at the other side of that discomfort is the butterfly.
Yeah, I really agree. There's a few things I want to talk about that have to do with that everyone has said here. Oh, nice. Layla's jumping in here too. Hey, Layla. Let's just get to Dennis, and then I'm gonna say a couple things. So yeah, go for it, Dennis. Oh, is it too loud? Am I?
Do you mind if I just pop in really quick?
Yeah.
I yield to Mr. Seegers.
As I yield to you. Jane, thank you for that share. And I also just wanted to point out for the group something that I think would be valuable, also based on what Neil said when he was like, people are asking me about coaching. And what you did, whether it was conscious or not, was you practiced a principle from this book, which is to speak in facts. And you were like, yeah, my client said this. And it takes it away from those buzzwords. And I thought that was such a beautiful way that you implemented it.
Stories
like,
are powerful.
this is what exactly. And you speak facts.
And just a note to say around the creating clients and what to say if you're asked what you do. There's one of the recent podcasts from Rich Litvin answers that exact question. So I would suggest that that's a good place to go and look as well, because I've listened to that a couple of times now, and I'll listen to it more because it's an incredibly useful way of framing the thinking about the answer when asked, hey, what do you do? What is this coaching thing?
Jane, I love how you reference a lot of things. Can you message them to me? I know that you put them in here, like in the call, but can you message them for me and I'll pack them into the next
I'll message
email?
that. Yeah, no problem.
I'd love to have that stuff available for people. Hey, Alicia.
Hi. I
Hey.
can't stay, but I wanted to pop in for a little bit anyway.
Well, that's great. Yeah, absolutely. Dip in and dip out. We're talking about we were kind of mixing things together, but one of the main things that we've been talking about is what exactly is an impactful conversation? What exactly is a life-changing conversation? And why that would create clients. And Dennis is about to weigh in on that.
One of the last things I was considering too is when you come into something like that, it's really similar to an operating room. We've gone out, we've actually created the coach in us by going out and receiving training, receiving interaction, receiving experiences, doing our own internal work. Taking the tools that we've been given into this conversation, this creation, and the other part of that is keeping it sterile. In an operating room, nobody wants to have somebody sneezing all over the patient, or somebody didn't clean under their fingernails because they were working in the garden and they come in there and try to get into somebody's insides while they're working on them. So making sure that when we come into that, we're not packing in anything that's distracting or damaging or any of that. The more I find out about this, I find out that I need to do more work on me, and ultimately that will lead to being a better and successful coach when it comes to sharing insights with other people, or allowing them to discover what it is that they already possess. So that sterile situation, don't bring any more crap into it than you already got to deal with.
Yeah, for sure. I absolutely agree with that. I think it's there is in that sense why um say taking on too many clients or having too many calls in a day or running yourself ragged in other parts of life can be detrimental to your client. I was having a great conversation with Nick about that recently because he's raising his fees and eventually he would like to raise them quite high, but he expects that the higher he raises the fees, the kind of the less amount of people he's going to have purposely so that he can create enough time in between those clients to do the inward work, do the research, do the things necessary to support those clients at those fee levels. So, and I thought that was great. It's not about how many people you can pack into a day and how much money you can create, but how much impact you can make with the people you do have, and how can you keep yourself, like you say, clean and open so that when you go into a conversation with someone, you're actually ready to witness them, like Jane was saying, and ready to focus on them, like Devin was saying. You actually are that person who can be that. One thought it does bring up for me though is that just occurred to me now is I remember when I started teaching and I would be having a heck of a day and I get to the classroom and I think, oh man, how am I going to do this? I'm exhausted from what I've done today. And then as soon as I was in the class with the student, the experience of having the student was so invigorating that even if it was difficult with them, I was so there with them. So I think that's a thing to kind of remember too, is that there's all the deep inner work to do and the be clean and all that stuff. But then there's also just the like, if you have a natural tendency to be with people because you enjoy it, there's going to be some reciprocity. There's going to be that natural framework. It's just going to come about like, hey, this person has a situation. I can see them. I'm feeling them. So they're both important to me, but it's also good after a while I started to rely on that, like not in a bad way, just in the sense of like, I might be like, oh man, I gotta do this. And then I'd say to myself, Neil, you love this. Like, just go and do it. You'll feel better once you do it. So something to kind of keep in mind while keeping yourself clean. Layla. Where's the unmute button?
Yeah, every time. I think I can lower this too. Okay, so hi. So I'm just coming in on this in the middle of everything you guys have spoken to. So if for some reason I'm saying things that you've already gone through, just be like, hey, stop it. We know this. Be quiet. I had a I had a conversation with one of my Rooted Temple vocal students yesterday. And often what we do is a balance, you could say, between looking at the inner voice and looking at how that affects what we're doing in music. And so 2 days ago, there was a massive fire in my complex and the siding of my house melted slightly and my 3 neighbors back of their house looks like marshmallow piles. And I was out of town at a birth. So I got a message from my cello player saying, is this your complex? Here, it's on the news. My kids were thankfully with my mother. My cat was running around outside, so he was hiding somewhere. And that happened. And then I got home and I had this conversation set up with one of my students. And we hadn't connected in a while. So I knew what was going to happen was she'd been, avoiding hanging out with me because we go so deep that she's like, I'm busy. And then finally I was like, okay, we're gonna have this conversation, we're gonna go deep. And she starts telling me about this trip. We're in the conversation. She's telling me about this trip that she's having, that she's planning to Europe. And she's like, and I'm asking her about singing though. I'm like, but what's been happening with your with your music? Have you been meeting your music? She's like, honestly, I've been so busy and I feel intimidated. I was like, intimidated? You feel intimidated by this thing that you adore and you love so much? What's going on there? She keeps talking. Then she starts talking about this vacation that she's taking to Europe. And I'm like, are you hitting up the jams? Like, are you gonna you're in Paris for 3 weeks? What are you, because she's talking, oh, it takes so much to plan and you got to do the transport. I'm like, you're in Paris for 3 weeks. Have you found any venues? She's an amazing jazz vocalist, this woman. So I'm like, are you going to the jazz jams? She's like, what, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you're going to freaking Paris. Like, so I go online as we're talking and I start Googling jazz. She's like, you can do that. She's very young. She's like 20, I don't know, 25 or something. And I'm finding these places, and she starts all of a sudden telling me about how she's been using a kazoo. I'm like, okay. And then it comes out slowly but surely, long story short, I realize that she's hiding. She's hiding her beauty, her voice, her capacity behind a kazoo, because she can laugh when she makes mistakes. She can blame this thing out there as opposed to taking responsibility and doing the practice and sitting down with her instrument. She can just laugh it off. As we're getting to this, like, you must, I feel like you would know, you're getting to this point where you're like, oh shit, here's where this conversation is going. Like, I found that impactful, this is what's going to make this thing roll, or this is what's going to, if we explore this and dig this up, we're going to find some serious meat. I get a knock on the door, and usually I don't answer, but my child was home because she didn't want to take public school sex ed. And she knows not to answer, whatever. She says, Mom, there's a stranger at the door. I'm like, oh. And I've known the student for a while, so I said, listen, I'm so sorry to take this moment. I would never normally do this, but I thought it had to do with the fire because, and she already knew. So I was like, this must be the maintenance people. You have to give me a minute. Like, I'm so sorry. I go, who's at the door? My ex's buddy serving me court papers in the middle of a fucking phone call with a client. And he gets this attitude and he says, we've been separated for 6 years, long story. Sorry, you've been served. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I take the folder that he hands me and I come right back here and I put it down on my desk and I sat there for a minute, and she's like you guys, she's there, right? She's like on the computer. And she goes, is everything okay? And I'm looking at the folder. I didn't open it. And I was just like, yeah, so about you hiding. And I just went right back in. So love the idea of sterility. Sometimes you can't keep the dirt out. Sometimes it's right fucking there. Sometimes it literally knocks on your door. And the biggest, most impactful thing that we can do for a client, which is what I learned yesterday, is we can look at the dirt, say, hi, dirt. I could hear my mind start to be like, motherfucker, we've been in mediation for 6 weeks. What the, like, I could hear all this stuff, my pain, my sadness, my kids, my love, my life exploding years ago, my all like I could hear it. But in that way that we might know as teachers or coaches or however we're supporting people, that all those things are like, Neil, you said once that the burner metaphor, where you take your hand off the burner in physical life because it's hot and you go, ouch. But for some reason in our thoughts, we just hang on to like the hot, painful thoughts. We don't have like, we don't think we have the same ability to just go, ow, right? And in that moment, I was like, I could feel my grasp being like, this hurts, this hurts, this hurts, this, you know, and I could feel it tightening. And then in honor of the fact that I was literally sitting in front of someone who herself was holding on to a sense of not wanting to be responsible in her art, not wanting to be the very best she could be, hiding from her own potential, not taking herself and her art and her music seriously. This young woman wants to get into public health policy internationally. And I said, why are you hiding? And she goes, I don't know. And right after, like, she says, everything okay? I was like, yeah. I'm like, why are you hiding? Let's get back to that. And she goes, I don't know. I'm not hiding. And she goes like that. And I was like, girl, it sounds like you're hiding and you're not taking yourself seriously. And if you don't start now, how are you going to expect all these big policy making people? Like, use music, use this thing that you love as a place to practice taking yourself seriously, because you're going to sit in front of these people and have these conversations. And, you know, it's like me helping her let go. I couldn't have done that had I, well, probably we would have gotten there anyways, but just to say that part about sterility, I love it, Dennis. And I also, it's like, we're so capable, like the dirt will come in and we're so capable of offering an immediate example, like an authentic, transparent example of like, this is what this looks like. I'm sitting there, she can see I'm distraught. I'm like, no, everything's fine. Boom, everything's fine. You know? So thanks, guys. Thanks for letting me share.
That's super powerful, Layla. Super powerful. The ability to not, it connects to what Jane was saying too about thoughts with clients and how they're not their thoughts. And you are in that moment actively choosing not to be those thoughts, not to embody the thoughts, not to get lost in them, to make a different choice, and then embody that for your client, which I think is the deepest thing. Like, you can read all the books and have all the ideas, and we were talking about this earlier, and Devin made some great statements about it. You know, we kind of talked about the buzzwords, all the different things that are possible through language. And then, though, if that's not anchored in being and action on your own part, then it's very difficult to embody that for your clients. And then that's really, and he had said also that coming from that place, that's going to be how you really make those shifts in the conversation. You know, like, I think especially when we get into vulnerable spaces, we're all human beings. We can all especially the deeper we get with someone, we can tell when it's murky for the other person. The client can tell if it's murky for us just as much as we can tell if it's murky for them when it comes to certain levels of vulnerability. So if we haven't kind of, in Nick's words, like tidied it up, like, or like you're saying, taking your hand off the burner, then we can't embody that. And the embodiment is really at least to me, that's what goes beyond the systems, the strategies, the diagrams, the symbology. We want all of that stuff, but at the core of it, we want that impactful energy of how we speak and the energy of our words and the energy of our being. So I think that's really cool. And I just wanted to say one thing that I didn't hear from anybody, at least not specifically, and I think it's one of the most important things in creating a really impactful conversation. So, throw your hands up at me if you meant this, but distinction. I think distinction plays a really, really big role in terms of because cognitive dissonance, which is what a lot of clients seem to be dealing with, and what we also seem to be dealing with you know, and everyone deals with in their own lives, is when ideas have been wrapped together so much so that two different ideas seem to be one idea. And as we like tease them apart, you know, like something like a simple one that's, you know, fairly contrived would be like, if I'm going to be an artist, I can't make money. Like, to be a true artist, you don't make money. And that those ideas are formulated as one idea. And as we kind of distinguish, like, oh, so you want to be an artist, you know? Yeah, just like you make kind of like, you're making each one distinct, but what you're doing is pulling them apart so that there is like a recognition that this idea is different than this idea. Or like distinguishing the difference between emotional states. Like someone might say to themselves, like, I really want to do this. And then underneath that is, I'm frustrated that I need to do this. And to be able to pull those things apart and say, okay, so you really want to do it, but you're also really frustrated about it. Let's pull these apart and actually look at them and distinguish them. Say, so what is the frustration? Okay, why do you want to do it? Okay, so now that we've kind of created that, and then some clarity comes from that distinguishing, it can kind of create a sense of because it seems to me that I found not only in coaching situations but in music, in lots of situations, when an idea is muddled together, it loses energy. Just like we have less energy to do the thing that we want to do. But as soon as the things are distinguished from each other, we might have more energy. We might then have enough energy to deal with both and then still have energy left over. It's like, okay, I'm frustrated about the situation. Great. So how do I deal with the frustration? Great. Now I know this thing. I'm going to deal with it. And I also know that I want to do it. Great. I have energy for that too. Hey, I actually have energy left over now because both those things have been resolved and I feel really good about myself. So I think that sometimes distinguishing things can be really, really useful. If someone comes up to me and says, oh, you're a coach, so does that mean you teach people about business? And to be able to be like, no, that's mentorship. That would be like a business mentor. That's different than what coaching is. Coaching is this, mentoring is that. Now the people go, oh, interesting. So maybe I don't know as much about mentoring as I thought, and I don't know as much about coaching as I thought. So it kind of creates these little spaces in between things to allow for a better grasp of what's kind of going on. I think that, and in a sense, I think Jane was kind of saying that with the husk and the butterfly kind of thing. You distinguish the difference between the cocoon and the butterfly, or the difference between our own thoughts and someone else's thoughts. And that does create clarity out of that distinguishing. So we're like, it's like, how do we create this clarity? Well, we can create it through distinguishing the differences between things. Layla and I have talked about this before too, is like when instead of mixing the levels, so instead of being like this and this are together, you separate them. Now they become more powerful on their own. So I think that it's a useful tool for all of us. Devin.
This conversation is gold, like they all seem to be. So thank you. Layla, I loved that story. And what I wanted to point out in that was that you mentioned getting this point where you're like, oh, I see where this conversation's starting to go. And also like recognizing that there's a point before that clarity of where the conversation's going, of where you could see unlocking the most value, where it's just you showing up with, they are the agenda. Like, and I feel like that's kind of the best definition of applying Dennis's surgery metaphor. Like, such a great metaphor, but it's like, to keep it clean, it's not that your stuff is not here, but it's like, that's checked at the door. The focus is that. Yeah, but what about you? Like, back to you. Um, and oh yeah, so the final idea that I wanted to share was that it's like it seems to me, I'm just realizing that I'm almost always looking for these places of cognitive dissonance where there's all of this internal conflict, and it feels like that's where we're putting on the Sherlock Holmes hat and going like, what is the juiciest thing we can uncover in this conversation? And it seems it's like it's always a conflicting thing to where when you tease it apart, EQ it a little, and go, we'll pan these. Okay, now they sound good.
Totally. Mhm. That I just want to jump in there and use that metaphor exactly because there's I hope you're okay with this, Layla, but one time we're gonna get
I love how you say, I hope you're okay with it, but you're
Yeah.
not going to tell me what you're about to say.
It's okay, you're gonna be fine with it. I hope. Because I think it's beautiful. Bloom, so Layla and Bloom have been doing this really cool thing together where they've been creating music across the world. And when I first met Bloom, when I first saw Bloom's photograph, I was like, oh my God, her and Layla would be the best of friends. I can see it already. And so they were creating this piece of music together, and they made this amazing piece of music. And then I was like, hey, Layla, do you think I can mix it a little bit? And she wasn't necessarily happy with the idea of mixing her music. She was like, whatever, I made this. I made it with my friend. Like, get your paws off of this, Neil. You're always trying to make it better, kind of thing, which is totally understandable. And I was like, can I just play with it for fun? You don't have to do anything with this. And then we mixed it out, and I panned different parts of it, and I cut out some frequencies and started, yeah, exactly, pause off. But it did start, as we distinguished everything from each other, and we put things into the background, into the foreground, and panned them, and like created the room for the sound. There was really cool stuff. Like there's these ducks, there was all these, like it was like a collage of different sounds, and all of a sudden you could hear all of the different sounds more with more clarity. Whereas before it was kind of like one two-dimensional sound. Suddenly it had depth and width and more. There's more to me. More, I could listen into it, and rather than just listening at it, you know. And I feel like that's the same thing with clients. As you kind of are able to there's like kind of this two-dimensional wall of the thoughts tangled together and what appears to be one idea, and then as you tease it apart, all of a sudden this room appears, a room of the different thoughts, and you can kind of be like, so what about this? And why is this in here? And how does this connect to this? And does this need to be here? Or like, could we put this in a different room? Or, you know, like, could we turn this down and turn this up? Like, what's the priority system that's going on in this? Are these things related to each other? And so I just wanted to kind of to tap on that metaphor that you were using, Devin, because I thought it's very true. And I just like anything that brings in something else. That's like, how does coaching work with other avenues of thought? So I thought that was good. Jane.
And what was beautiful there was you talked about relationship. And I was going to talk a little bit about how sometimes I see with clients that they've mixed up causation and correlation. So they've mixed up that something looks like it's related to something else and had it as that is because of that, the causation. And again, that's the teasing apart. Okay, what are these two ideas you're conflating together? Where is this truth that you're talking about coming from? Where's your belief? And it's really then on teasing that out and pulling that out, you know, careful questioning, looking at the response, looking at how their body reacts. And then sometimes it's just plain calling it out. You know, it's plain calling out, and as Nick pulled to the creative recharge, it's the bullshit button. It's literally, nah, that's bullshit. Let's have the truth. And that is a really powerful tool. If you can see your own bullshit, wow, then you can replace it with something else.
Yeah, I think that's so. I want to talk about that for so. I think that's so real, Jane, and such a interesting tool. It's like a really powerful tool. So powerful so that it can be like, it can kind of cook the person a little bit, and that, so there's like the concept of psychological safety kind of like come into the situation. And I really liked what you said about teasing things apart, looking at their body language, seeing what they're ready for. Like, are they ready for that like direct impact that's going to kind of blow up that obstacle?
So, for example, the client I had last night that suddenly had that realization, we've actually touched on the edges of that so often, and it's not been the right time to just push that little bit further. And yesterday was, you know, and you have to be really careful, because you can push and get it wrong, and then that relationship has to be rebuilt. And that can be quite challenging, because you suddenly push them at a point that they weren't ready for. But the parcel that I had to go and collect earlier, that was my bullshit button, because I've now invested in one, because that was so powerful on the creative recharge. And I just thought, you know what, my clients need that. So, yeah.
That's great. And I think that also brings a certain loving playfulness to it to have the bullshit button.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That reminds me, I used to have this button that said that was that when you hit it, it said that was easy. It was like this really big red button. And whenever I clean my house or do some chore or something like that, I just smack the button like that was easy. So it's just sometimes having these like ridiculous props still like honed in on what's true, but gives it like some sense of playfulness, which might
Yeah, I was
be.
going to say, it brings the childish playfulness to it, which makes it safer.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because I think that's such a key thing, is being able to go, okay, how do we negotiate this so that we do drill down deep and break through these things that are really getting in people's way, and doing it in a way that maintains that like that sense of trust, where they feel like you're not just what would be the word for it? Like you're just brutally doing it for the sake of it, you know? Yeah, no, no, go for it, Jane.
Just to pick up on the model that Dennis was talking about, and this safety model, and being clean. The other challenge is that if a client is going somewhere that's raw for you, being aware of how that shows up in you. Because it can take you places, and then you're not present in the conversation in the same way. And certainly years and years of being a classroom teacher and working with children, you know, all sorts of different children, being able to scan yourself and go, oh, okay, where am I coming from? And being really, really tuned into your own emotional self is really important when you go into these conversations. So as well as the clinical side of things, it's actually knowing where you're at and whether you're in the state to go to that spot today that the client is pointing to. Because if you're not in the state, you can't hold them safely.
Yeah,
So
I
you
think
have to know both those things.
You're so right, Jane, and I love how you pointed to children about that, because children can really help you build that emotional attenuation, like, because
they can, or they can undo it.
Pardon?
They can also undo it.
Yeah, well, that's what I kind of mean, is that like, if children are going to go through all their states and do all the things they're going to do, and it's your job as the adult to be able to find that. I would almost call it, like, for me, it's like this inward spaciousness. Not to get too like caught up on what they're doing, not to be, trying to get things to happen too soon, or feel like you're rushing or something. There has to be this spaciousness of letting the child do what they're doing while guiding them, and that takes an emotional strength, you know. It's easy to fly off the handle with children and be like, just tie your shoes or just put your jacket on. Like, we gotta go, just eat your breakfast. Like, you know, like being able to not do those things, or like, just like, everyone stop talking. Like, you know, like it takes energy to be able to do that in a way where you're not straining yourself. So being keyed into that is beautiful. Layla.
It's a talent you need to learn, definitely.
Yeah, it's a skill. It's a real skill set. It's not, it might come naturally to some people, but it's a skill set.
The listening comes up too, like when you were speaking, Devin, about it's like the space before, you know, and we're talking about how we're showing up, or how are we keeping ourselves steady, or yeah, there's this shit coming in and there's the dirt, or, you know, and all through all of that. And yes, Jane, like, are we able in that moment to be listening so deeply, readily, that we can hear the dissonance, you know, like that moment, Devin, where you're saying it's like I almost envision it. I don't know, maybe it was the way you were moving your hands too. It's like you're kind of on this like river. Can you hear the waterfall coming? You know, you might not be able to see it from your vantage point because you're right there, but can you hear it coming? And the only way we can hear it is if we're listening so deeply. And I would extend that out to include not just listening to what that person is saying, but listening to your intuition and listening to your own, because I was just at this birth 2 nights ago, and yet another beautiful birth. And there was a moment right before that freaking baby's head emerged, when this woman had been going now for like inactive process for almost 2 days. She's now like, we're talking long. She's tired. She's exhausted. She's saying all kinds of stuff out here with her words. I'm listening, keeping myself strong. I had showered, I had taken a walk through this, you know, feeding myself, right? So in this case, we're talking about a very long coaching. If you want to relate it to coaching, it's a long coaching call. It's like days. And so keeping the self strong. And I'm listening to her, and I had said, try not to push. Baby will emerge on its own, which is scientifically true. They know that now. The more you don't push, the more the hormones are going to go right into your bottom of your body, and it's going to make you stretchy. So try not to push. I'm listening. I hear you pushing. Breathe. Breathe through those spaces. Open. She kept pushing. And I knew she was nowhere close when she started pushing. Finally, it's been now 2 hours, 3 hours of her grunting away. And I walked up there and I said, what are you trying to get to some finish line? Like, what are you doing? Like, you could do this stage for another 2 days too. So you're going to exhaust the shit out of yourself. Oh, I keep trying. First time mothers are so dramatic. I keep trying not to push. But I can't help it. Okay, so she's in this space. And then I realized, Jane, you know, that maybe I was doing that explosion, you know, it was like, maybe I need to rebuild this relationship between us, because I think she doesn't trust that what I'm saying is valuable for her, you know? So I recognized that, and I was like, okay, I got to rebuild. So I backed right off. I said, you know what? You follow your body. Let's go there. And I just put my hand out and I held her hand and I didn't say a word. And she went through 2 or 3 sensations. She had said nothing, but all of a sudden in me, because the environment was clean, because I was taking care of myself, because I was listening so deeply to everything, to her and to me, to my inside voice, to the inner whisper, I heard, why is she hiding? And I was, again, serendipitous that two people in my life happened to be hiding within 24 hours of each other. Nevertheless, this lady was first, and it was, why is she hiding? And I, for 2 seconds, hesitated saying it out loud because of what you were saying, Jane, where it's like, fuck, is this the right, like, is this okay? Because I just rebuilt her trust right now. Can I say this out loud? And it happened again in my head. And it was like, the next thing that came was, Layla, hiding is a power in birth. Hiding is a power. You're not telling her, you're not asking her, why is she hiding? You're saying, hide, sister. Fucking hide. And you're just pointing at that energy and going, do it. So it transformed in me. And I waited until that was like, okay, this is for this person. This is not against something they're saying or against some way that they're being or against anything. This is truly for this person and her growth and her, in this moment, her birth, her actual like transforming her birth. And I said that to her and she whipped her. So she's like this, and I said, why are you hiding? And she goes like this. And I could see she's thinking, fuck you, right? Like that's her, she's looking at me. And I was like, I looked her straight in the eyes. I said, hiding is powerful. And she was like, you could see this, like, whoa. She just went like this. She put her hand down. She goes, I feel the baby's head. It was immediate, giving that woman permission to hide, empowering her to go into that hidey space. Her transformation could ensue. So like, I guess just saying, and thank you guys always for listening. I always mean to speak small and then it just keeps tumbling. It's about listening. And thank you for listening. Yeah, because it's about listening deeply, not only to that meandering river, right? Or that like what they're saying and what they're emoting and their body language and all what you can observe and look and observe. But it's like, okay, but I'm also hearing things. You didn't say that. You said nothing about that, but I'm hearing things and really listening for that moment. Yeah, Jane, when it's like totally, you're ready, the person's ready, it's full alignment, it's for their power, out it comes, and then not hesitating, like not taking the intuition gem and being like, no, blah, that's gonna, no, it's like, no, wait, there is shit there. That's why I'm hearing it, because I am in a space of open readiness for this. Even if that person isn't, that's why it's coming through me. Yeah.
Could I say
Yeah,
something?
go, Jane, go for it, Jane. Yeah.
I love that, Layla. I absolutely love that. And thank you for sharing. It was beautiful. And what's coming up for me is that thing about not preparing what you're saying, but listening for what comes next. And really tuning into that. So you're never in your own head thinking. You notice the thoughts that come in, which is very different. And that's a beautiful description of it. I love it. Thank you, Layla.
Thanks for even, there's a distinguishing piece, Neil. Thanks for distinguishing that, because that is what it is, Jane. It's like you can hear that intuition come in and then you can start to do the blah, blah, blah. But if you're really keyed in, it's almost like you're in a state of curiosity constantly, that childlike, right? Like you're like, oh, hello, what the fuck was that? And then you're like, when you internally are like, I'm curious, hello, then more comes.
And this is the beauty of space too. This is the beauty of, it's like music isn't there without the pauses. this is exactly the same.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Silence is the canvas of all sound.
Mm. Yeah, and Layla, like I said, the other people who, drop heavy knowledge in this group, don't hold back. This is not a place to hold back. Dennis.
Layla, if I'm ever in a battle to save the world, I want you standing beside me because you're a fucking badass.
I am here. I'm right beside you, Dennis.
You know what I mean, dude.
You gotta hear her song Edge of the World.
What we're doing, what we are purposing in our heart to do, what we're dedicating ourselves to do is so fucking courageous. It's insane. It's ludicrous to imagine without any point of reference that we could go and have a conversation with somebody and see transformation, but it happens time and time again. And if we'll go and prepare ourselves and get in the right place and do all the right everything, and then just let our heart guide us in what's going on. There's a song, guy that didn't live too long. His name was Jason Dealey. He was a Christian musician, but he wrote a song called Love is the Law. And if we let whatever it is that we do be governed, be encouraged, be structured, be proposed, be enacted, all of that by love, then what the hell else do we need? And that's the whole thing is you can't sit there and say, dude, I'm going to call bullshit on you and not love somebody, because you don't let yourself out like that to affect change. You don't put yourself on the line and let people actually know what you're thinking and feeling and seeing if you don't care about them. And I love you, Layla. You're awesome. You are truly a badass, and I'm serious about that battle line. You can borrow one of my ARs. I'll show you how to run it, but then I'll let you go.
So is that is that an automatic rifle you were referring to?
It's an evil black carbine, yes. But if it comes down to that, then that's what the tool is. See, we got all kinds of different tools, and the appropriate tool is always the appropriate tool. But hopefully that'll never come to that. But I mean, that was a compliment.
That's beautiful. I'd be into that. I love to see Layla shooting a gun like that. It'd be crazy. I would love that personally.
I would just stand back with an amused look on my face and let shit fly.
Yeah,
because that'd be one of those instances where people would be thinking, what the fuck?
Well, she grew up in Texas, so wouldn't be surprised. Devin, did you have that's great. Devin, did you have a closing statement that you wanted to make here, or
don't be scared, Devin. Be courageous. Come on, dude.
What's that?
Be courageous. Courageous. Spit it out.
I like that. Courageous. That's what I'm going for. Creative and courageous every day. First of all, I'm just so ready for Layla's album cover with an AR. I'm ready for it. I don't know if it would be like a metal album or like a country album, but I think you'd pull it off either way.
Locked and loaded love.
I love it. I think this is actually a great place to close on, and it's a little gem that was shared with me, inspired by Dennis, in this whole conversation. But it was from my sister's old boyfriend, and they both worked in the emergency room, and he was the chillest dude, and basically you've normalized a level of absurdity and trauma and pain and suffering that in the emergency room where you can just show up and that oh yeah, and another day just saved 3 lives and that one didn't make it and great, on to the next one. We got to fly this helicopter there and pick up the it's like out of a movie. And the biggest thing that I ever got from him was say it with love. And it was so powerful thinking of the context, and I think it's applicable to conversation. But it's like, how do you tell someone this hard news? Whether it be uh, pointing at something that maybe doesn't want to be pointed at in a coaching conversation, or like bedside manner of an emergency doc going, your kid didn't make it. And I think it's the same thing of, yeah, when we like Dennis said, come in and just let love lead. It's like, okay, I could say something that's really confrontational, but I can say it with love, and it still has that psychological safety, like you meant.
Totally. And it's especially with like it's almost like the love creates a little bit of space. Like just makes you just stop for just that second longer and be like, how am I actually coming at this? Rather than just kind of being blunt and unfeeling, just a tiny bit of Dennis, I want to hear what you have to say. Although I want to just reaffirm, and I know I said this at the beginning of the call, but Layla wasn't here. I don't know if Philip was here, but please check out Devin's website. Please use his website. If anything comes to your mind about that website, please share it with him. I think it would be really effective. Like I was saying before, it's the first kind of piece of art or tool or utility that's emerged from the society. I think that we as a group, both here in this call, anyone who's watching it or gets the email, I would love if we celebrate this fact and encourage it amongst people, because it could really be something cool. And just, like I said before, I feel like we made it through a threshold where the community has become reciprocative. It's creating something on its own. We've taken this book. Now art is coming from we've had conversations. Art's coming from the conversation. Utility is coming from the conversation. A true society is emerging. And I think that is a beautiful thing. I can't stress it enough. So I will put it in the email. Absolutely. It's in the email that you got, Layla, just for this last session. So where you got the registration link, it's the first link of that group. So I would just please take some time to even just look at it, utilize it. Positive criticisms, things you'd like to see, anything. Let's celebrate Devin. Let's celebrate Moonlight, or sorry, let's celebrate Hummingbird Society. Let's celebrate this experience. This is beautiful. Dennis.
The other thing about all of that, knowing how to do this, how to do that, when to do this, when to do that. One of the things that it's important to remember is that sometimes the answer is nothing. One of the things that used to make me crazy about talking to Nick, but I've realized as time goes on that it's one of his really big superpowers, is the fact that you'll say something and he won't say a damn thing for a good 30, 45 seconds. And he just like, and I've come to love that about him, because he's not in a rush to hear his own voice. He does want whatever is going on to be pressed down, shaken together, to get to perking, to percolate, to breathe, to do everything that it needs to do. And it's like, we as musicians, you want to find who the most artful musician is. They're the ones that know when not to play. And it's like that with this. So yeah, that's as important foundation as anything else in here. Love you guys.
Yeah, I think that, Dennis, that is fantastic. Layla, I would love to hear your thoughts, but I want to try and stay within some boundaries in the call. So I'm just going to say you guys are fantastic. And let's continue this conversation next week. Also, if you want to put put comments on this video about anything that wasn't shared. Yes, totally. Anger of love is transformational. All feelings are valid. All of them. Okay, this is incredible. Such a short chapter, so potent. Thank you, everybody, for such a fantastic conversation. We'll see you next week.